Excellent. Oh, Emily's just here. You know what? Again now. So good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming along to our Let's Drain the Drains Phase 2 project launch with all our project partners. So I'm Hayley Tate, and I'm the CEO of Tangaroa Blue Foundation, and we're the lead for the project. And I also have with us today Melissa Tularunta, who's our Tangaroa Blue Foundation project officer based in Melbourne, and also Aaron Horsey, who is the representative from the Clean Water Group, who will be doing a lot of the operational side of the servicing. And three of us are going to talk through the project and just answer anybody's questions that they have. We've signed off on the Sustainability Victoria grant contract now, so it is starting as of the 30th of September, although I do know that we have had quite a lot of work happening in the background up until this point. All right, Mel, I'll get you to change the slide for me. So just want to start off with an acknowledgement of country. So Mel, would you like to do that for us?
Yeah, sure. So we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we all meet on today. For myself here in Melbourne, it would be the Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people of the Eastern Kulin Nation. And we recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. And we pay our deepest respect to their elders past, present and emerging.
Thanks, Mel. So what we really wanted to cover off today is just basically a welcome to the project, have a chat to each of the project partners, an introduction of who Tangaroa Blue is, just in case there's some new representatives from our partners and also from the Clean Water Group. Recap really quickly what we achieved in phase 1, because this is actually a build on from a project that we ran through 2019-2020. This is phase 2 of Let's Drain the Drains. And just look at what we need to cover off for that project. So an intro, our aims and objectives, the timeline, the stormwater drain audits, the source reduction projects that we want to build off that. Also who the main contacts are for the project from our side and from your side as well. And then any questions that anybody might have. So that's what we'd like to cover off today. Now I'll get you to change the slide for me. Excellent. So partners and supporters. So who is part of this program? So the Let's Drain the Drains Phase 2 project is supported by the Recycling Victoria Communities Fund. It's delivered by Sustainability Victoria on behalf of the Victorian Government. So that's where the funding is coming from our side. But we also know that all of our partners have provided in-kind support for the project to happen as well. So with that grant, we needed to provide, I think it was a 1:5 ratio with the in-kind support. So everybody is contributing to the operation and the rollout of the program. The official media acknowledgement statement for the project is that the project is delivered by Tangaroa Blue Foundation in partnership with the Clean Water Group and with the support from the cities of Melbourne, Wyndham, Hobsons Bay, Moreland, Kingston, Maribyrnong, Greater Dandenong, the vicinity centres, and also we have some data support from the University of New South Wales. And so everybody is being acknowledged in that way, and their logos are on the sheet there as well. We did want to just ask who was here today and what their role was. So we'll just do that quickly if you don't mind. Emily, can we start off with you?
Sure. So I'm Emily Boucher. I'm the manager of open space at City of Kingston, but I also sit on a number of regional panels and forums, including the Dandenong Integrated Water Management Strategy and Elster Creek.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. And Serena from...
Yes, hi, Serena Gillott from City of Kingston also. I'm in the Environmental Planning Division, and I work on community engagement around anything environmental, and particularly with a focus on climate change at the moment.
Thanks, Serena. And Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm at City of Greater Dandenong. I'm in the waste team. I've just started as a community waste education officer, and I have a particular focus in litter and dumped rubbish.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia. I will just quickly read out our other contacts that we have from the councils, as you may know some of them. So we also had Simon Crawford, which is from the City of Wyndham, and he's in the Waste and Litter Education Officer. Hayley Jarvis, who's also from the City of Wyndham. She's the team leader of resilience and waste education. We have Juan Chambers from City of Melbourne, and he's in the Waterways team. Alyssa Howard, who's also City of Melbourne Waterways Operations Officer. We have from the other councils, Sean Young from Hobsons Bay, who's the Waste and Litter Community Engagement Officer. Martin Foster, who's from Maribyrnong, Council Parks Rangers. I think that is all of our councils, unless I have missed anybody, Mel. We also then have Karen, who's going to be joining us at 10:30. She is actually from Sustainability Victoria. She's the program lead for the Recycling Victoria Communities Fund. And then we have Joseph from the Vicinity Centres. So he's representing the shopping centres that are part of this project, and that both of those centres will be based in the city of Hume. So that's our roll around. And then we have Dr. Graham Clark, who is from the University of New South Wales, who's been helping us with the data up until this point from all of the stormwater traps from phase 1. And he'll be assisting us again in the rollout for phase 2 from that background perspective as well. All right, Mel, next slide, please. So a very, very brief overview of who Tangaroa is, because I know Emily and Serena know us very well, but Julia, I don't know if you know who we are or what we do.
Not very well, but I've spent a fair bit of time like stalking you all on Google. So
awesome. All right, and anybody else that might be watching this recording as well. So look, Tangaroa Blue Foundation is a registered charity. We've been around since 2004. We run a national program called the Australian Marine Debris Initiative. And the goal of the Australian Marine Debris Initiative is to, first of all, remove marine debris and litter items from the environment, but also to collect scientifically robust data, to use that data to try and track the debris back to the source, and then bring the right stakeholders to the table to actually find a source reduction plan and that will stop the items from being released into the environment in the first place. And then obviously through continued monitoring, data collection, we can see the impact of those source reduction plans. So it's a holistic framework, not just of cleaning up, because if all we do is clean up, that's all we'll ever do. But it's about finding ways that we can practically stop this stuff at the source. And we need to have a really good comprehensive stakeholder network to make that happen. So that's who we are. Tangaroa is a Maori and Polynesian name. It's the god of the ocean. One of his laws are, if you look after me, I look after you. So pretty important in this day and age that we take care of the environment that actually gives us life. And so our big focus is on the waste stream, the marine debris stream, and the health of our oceans and our marine environment. Mel, next page, please. So just as an overview for the Australian Marine Debris Initiative, this is those steps that I kind of talked about. We do primarily in the past beach cleanups, then we did beach and river cleanups, and now we do beach, river, stormwater trap, all other kinds of projects. Anything that would link litter from moving from one part of the environment to another part, which ultimately ends up into the marine environment. So from beach cleanup origins, we've now expanded our project a lot, and the Let's Drain the Drains project is one that we've been working with the Clean Water Group and a lot of councils to create a national stormwater data set, because that's a very different focus than just what's washing up on a beach. It gives us much closer to the source information that we can use to stop that flow. So everything that we remove from the environment, we sort and count. It goes through a data collection process and into the Australian Marine Debris Initiative database, tracking to the source, implementing those source reduction projects, and then continually to monitor to make sure they're actually working, if they need tweaking or whether we need to start from scratch again. No point in putting a lot of investment, time and effort into a project to stop something if we don't actually go and check whether it did it or not. So it needs to be holistic and ongoing in that way. Next slide, thanks, Mel. We know that up to 95% of marine debris in Port Phillip Bay is estimated to have started from land, from all the research that's being done. We know that plastics is the #1 item that's being recorded in the data sets. And we know that it's not just macro items, but from the great work that was done by the Eco Centre in their microplastics data sets, we know that there's a phenomenal amount of small stuff going in there as well. So if we can stop the stuff before it enters the bay, that's where we're going to get our biggest bang for our buck in the reduction of litter impacting our marine environments. Next slide, thanks, Mel. And of course, the closer we get it to the source, the cheaper and the easier it is to get it out of the environment. So pretty time consuming for people to have to go and pick stuff up ad hoc nature, a very big investment from councils and other land managers in cleaning up all the time. Much better if we can prevent that stuff from occurring in the first place, a lot cheaper, and in the long term, a big reduction in costs associated in dealing with litter as well. Just a couple of updates and milestones from the Australian Marine Debris Initiative database. We have now over 4,000 cleanup sites, and cleanup sites are places that we're recording data from. So they can be from individual stormwater traps or actual community cleanup events. There's over 25,000 cleanups that have been recorded into the database, and that's a contribution. They're not just Tangaroa Blue cleanups. That's a contribution of over 2,000 community groups and other partner organisations. So we've really been able to show that people are interested in collaborating. And if we can get data collected in the same way, put into the same spot, it gives us a much greater resource that we can scale and use. So it can be used at a very local council level, but it also can be scaled to use at a state, a federal and an international level. And I guess one of our really exciting things to celebrate and to let people know is Tangaroa Blue was actually accredited by the United Nations Environment Programme just a couple of months ago now. So this framework is being acknowledged as being something that's actually working. And from a reportable to the Sustainable Development Goals, this project is actually delivering on Sustainable Development Goal 14 and 17. So 14 has one about marine litter, and it's showing that citizen science can definitely assist in these bigger picture outcomes, as well as what we're trying to do locally on the ground as well.
Hey, Heidi.
Yep.
Could I just ask, with those statistics you've got on screen at the moment, I might have missed it, but over what time period are they, please?
That's since 2004. So when we first started.
Okay.
So that's an accumulation. There's been a significant increase in yearly inputs to that. You know, 2004, there was only a couple of people. But, you know, after the last 2 or 3, I think actually a good way to put it is it took us until, I want to say 2015 to get our first 5 million pieces of data in the database. So from 2004 to 2015. And now we're just up to almost 20 million. So it's been exponentially growing, you know, with that inputting of data, which is super exciting. And the volunteer hours, you know, almost 600,000 volunteer hours. And if you times that by $30 an hour, it shows you how much value citizen scientists and volunteers, you know, want to contribute to this issue, which is just amazing. So really important to show that collaboration, but also providing the platform that we can collaborate on. And that's what the Australian Marine Debris Initiative was all about. Next slide, thanks. And then I just wanted to give a couple of examples of some source reduction projects that we've been done, because this is the new part of this project than the Let's Drain the Drains phase 1, which was more about removal and data collection. Now we want to implement these source reduction projects to show how we can stop at the source. And we've had a massive win this year that I wanted to share with you. As part of our Reef Clean program, which is a 5-year federal government funded program to deliver marine debris removal and prevention services across the whole of the Great Barrier Reef. We've started a collaboration with the Townsville Stadium, the Country Bank Stadium in Townsville, to address litter, cigarette butt litter associated with all the NRL football games. And we kicked off at the very end of last year and early this year with some baseline data work. And we put a goal on the table to reduce cigarette butt litter by June 30 by 50%, which everybody thought was quite ambitious. But we thought we had some good reasons to know that that was achievable. We worked with the stadium to look at designated smoking areas with cigarette butt bin infrastructure, with directional signage, with on-site media and also social media and education and awareness reach out to the community, and also with a litter hero team. And we're actually able to get a 71% reduction in cigarette butt litter by the end of that program. Now, since then, the stadium has adopted the program full time for the rest of the year. And it's also looking, because it's a state government owned stadium, they're actually looking at rolling out similar programs to all the Queensland stadiums in the coming year, which is just a massive outcome. And it shows collaboration. What can we do when we're all together? And, you know, those guys had to internally figure some stuff out, which they did because they were committed, and we were able to bring support, funding, and our experience and resourcing to the table as well. So just a massive outcome. And that's part of a program that we've called Ditch the Flick. So, you know, really, we'd love to take the learnings and that campaign and actually take it national. So this is a really good opportunity to kind of take Ditch the Flick and make it relevant to Port Phillip Bay as part of this program, as an example. Next slide, thanks, Mel. There's our Litter Hero team. So as part of Ditch the Flick, we also had a couple of volunteers come around and actually just pick up some litter around the outside of the stadium prior to the kickoff to the game and up until the end of half time. And that was also an incentive for people not to litter, because they saw volunteers coming around and picking stuff up as well. So that was part of our strategy. And those volunteers got free tickets to the next game of the rugby league from the stadium as well. So thank you. So the Litter Hero team was really, really successful for that as well. And they've collected over 7,000 items removed during that framework. And they were critical in helping us monitor and collect data for this project. So we had something that we could show as a measurement. Yeah, State of Origin was massive. And the project's still ongoing, which I mentioned. Next slide. Thanks, Mel. And most of you are aware of Operation Clean Sweep, but we've had some big wins for Operation Clean Sweep in the last 12 months. So for those of you that might not have heard of that, it's an industry program that we're working with Chemistry Australia, with Victorian EPA and with local councils to reduce the amount of plastic resin pellet, which is the raw feedstock from the plastics industry, what they use to make plastic stuff, from escaping during manufacturing and transportation. So we started this program monitoring back in 2010 around Port Phillip Bay, and we know that there were areas where there was significant loss happening. We've done a couple of things to address that. The stormwater traps that have been installed have given us some really amazing data to show how much is actually being lost from industrial areas. We've worked a real lot with the Victorian EPA on compliance, because there was a gap in the compliance response of whether it was EPA or local council laws that were responsible for dealing with this. And the EPA in 2018 issued their guidance of handling plastic resin pellets. So they've taken that responsibility on. And we know that with the Opal officers that have been embedded in some local councils, they've been really key in being able to do that industry engagement piece around this issue as well. So the big wins that we've had with Operation Clean Sweep is that now we have well over 40 actual companies, and those companies represent over 60 actual sites. The majority of them are around Port Phillip Bay, because that's obviously where a lot of the industry is, but they represent all parts of the plastics value chain now. So from the suppliers to the logistics companies, including toll logistics and cube logistics, through to the actual manufacturers, to the recyclers. And we also have 6 industry groups that represent different parts of the plastics industry signed up to engage their membership in that as well. So that's really exciting. The other 2 big wins is that Operation Clean Sweep was listed as an action and a target in the Australian government's National Plastic Plan that was released earlier this year, which shows that they're acknowledging that this is best practice. And the New South Wales government have also listed in the New South Wales Plastics Plan as an outcome. And so that's great as well. And we're talking with Queensland, and obviously Victoria is working through this through the EPA. So some good wins there to bring it up to be that industry norm that we really wanted to see it as. And this is another really good way to measure the impact of interventions at a council or a EPA level by having stormwater traps and the drain buddy traps actually in industrial areas, so we can monitor the impact of that as well. So that will be part of this program as well. Next slide, thanks, Mel. I'm going to hand over to Aaron now to talk a little bit about Clean Water Group.
Hi, everyone. Okay, yeah, Clean Water Group. So we basically we install, design and service a range of stormwater quality improvement devices And in more recent times, we've really started to focus our energies into analysing the types of material going down, which is where our relationship has grown with Kangaroo Blue. So I'll get you to just move on to the next slide, Mel. So yeah, our main focus is that we service, you know, the big end-of-line systems. And then my focus has been more on the drain buddy system and the at-source systems, because that we're able to locate those really close to businesses and site-specific, and then analyse those and get a real good understanding of exactly what litter types are going down the drains. And then report that back to the client and then bring them along that journey. I suppose once you see what goes down a stormwater pit in any given month, you see it laid out on a table, it's a real smack in the face and kind of can't unsee it then. So it's been fantastic to work in this space and getting the community involved. That's been really exciting as part of phase 1 of this project. Next slide, Mel. So I suppose some of the advantage of the at-source system is, which I touched on before, was being able to place them in front of businesses, certain land use types, and really understand the litter types going down in those site-specific areas. A few other advantages, I suppose, with the at-source systems is because we've got them really close to the source. You know, we've got them at the start of the line, so we're protecting the infrastructure as well, so our drainage networks and that aren't being blocked up, and so that's extending the service life of the council's assets as well. So I think that's a huge benefit of this system as well. Next slide, Mel. So, sorry guys. So yeah, as I touched on, I think the big thing with the drain buddies is being able to use these as a preventative and a diagnostic tool. And from this project, which we'll go in a bit more detail, it's just, you know, it's so exciting. We're now taking them into schools and working with community and students, and just to see how engaged they are. They really, you know, people really want to, you know, get involved and get a good understanding of what's going down their local drains and do something about it. So to be a part of that and for the drain buddy to play the role that it plays, I'm so excited to be in this space and looking forward to the next 18 months. This is a heat map. So from the data, this is a project we've been working on in Mackay. We can really sort of focus in on where those sort of hotspot areas are. If some drain buddies have been deployed and the data sort of showing that they're not really that effective, there's not too much litter there, but we're seeing from other areas that they are really effective, well, then we can have the ability in many cases to be able to shift those into other areas and then track that, and so really fine tune it until we've got, you know, like with a small amount of drain buddies, once we nail them in the right spots, it really allows us to do a lot of good with, you get a lot of bang for your buck sort of thing, I suppose, so to speak. Yeah, next page, is there another one there? So there's just a bit of an overview of some of the areas that we sort of have our drain buddies in at the moment. Shopping centres for me is one of the big ones. It's where everyone comes together. That stormwater, the drain buddy there on the left, that's a classic example of what we see going down the drains. It's just everyone's walking back to their vehicles, and either, you know, we get a lot of wind down in Melbourne, so it's not just rain that's driving this stuff into the stormwater pits. It's quite often we see just as much litter when there's been a lot of wind down there. And to see, you know, after a 2-month cycle and you're stopping 3 or 4 cubic meters going down one shopping centre, it's like, holy wow, it's pretty full on. So that's definitely been one of our major focuses, and I'm super excited to have vicinity shopping centres involved with this project, especially with the SRP too, because it is a little bit of a contained environment, so to speak. So we've got some great controls there, being restricted to the shopping centre. So I can't wait to see the outcomes there. And I know Joseph and Greg from Vicinity have they're right behind it. So I expect to see some fantastic outcomes there. Next slide. Another example, we saw this campaign from Coles, which was all really great with the kids getting into these little shoppers. But then a month after that was rolled out, what started showing up in the stormwater pits? It was, the wrappers. So there's all, it's great to sort of be able to stop that there and shine a light on some of these initiatives that might look great, but then they have consequences as well. And there's a couple of other things there. I've noticed it with the container deposit scheme. We've had traps in front of the where you deposit the cans and bottles, and the sites, they make you take the lids off. So we were finding a lot of lids all of a sudden inside of the trap. So, and that just really shocked me. We had one drain that had like over 200 lids in it, and we normally would only get 2 or 3 lids in it. And then they set up the system there. That was at a shopping centre in New South Wales. So didn't have an image for that, sorry, but it's just another example. Next slide. Cigarette butts is going to be a focus in phase 2. We see them in, I don't know that I've come across a drain buddy yet that has, I don't know if we've recorded one throughout this whole project that hasn't recorded at least one cigarette butt up to traps. I think we had one up in, I won't mention which town, but in Queensland, I think it hit just shy of 2,000 cigarette butts after a 2-month cycle, downstream from a pub. Loading docks at the shopping centres, in the CBDs. It's, we put signs up, and sometimes it'll shift, and then all of a sudden there'll be another hotspot area that hasn't had cigarette butts, and now it's catching lots because a lot of the times we haven't actually, we've just moved people around. So I think the Ditch the Flick campaign, I think, is going to have some great impact there. So I'm looking forward to seeing that rolled out with a couple of the councils. Next slide. No. Industrial areas is another fantastic area, which we've been great through this project to analyse some of that, some data in the industrial space. These are some images of the drain buddies in action through the Operation Clean Sweep project, which Haiti touched on earlier. What have we had? Regular samples in the 30 to 40,000 pallets per one drain buddy. So yes, it might only look like one sort of Ziploc full of material, but when you multiply that out by the several hundred drain buddies that would probably need to be deployed to cover all the sites across Melbourne, it is pretty confronting. But we are making some huge ground and had a lot of been approached quite a lot recently from a number of businesses. So that's fantastic to see that they're picking up on this Operation Clean Sweep program. I will let Haiti talk to that a little bit more too, because she's got some really all over this project. I'll leave it with you, Haiti.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I see that there's a really good opportunity for councils to work together with the EPA, whether it's through their Opal officer, if they have one that's embedded in council, or through more general through the EPA, for a bit of a collaboration on industrial area pollution. So we are more than happy and able to provide images like these from the traps. We're able to show the data that's coming from the stormwater traps and feed that back to the Opal officers and to council, and that will provide the evidence that can at least initiate some of those discussions with specific industry partners. So instead of not actually knowing why you're knocking on the door of a business, you've actually got something that you can say, hey, look, this is part of a project. We've been able to see that this is a problem, and we've got this evidence. So we've also got a solution for you. We've got a program called Operation Clean Sweep that can help you address this particular issue. So within council, there's that opportunity, and we'd love to explore that as well. I know we've got a couple of people that have joined us a little bit late. I'm just going to let Aaron finish his last couple of slides, and then I'm going to introduce you guys from there, if that's okay. All right, Aaron, back to you.
Okay, cool. Next slide. Thanks, Mel. I think we're almost done. And I suppose it's not all bad. You know, we get up at 1, 2 a.m. in the mornings, the teams, and everyone that works with the clean water team, and Mel's now had first-hand experience with that. You know, it's hard work. We get into it, but you know, there's rewards with it. As you can see in the image there, we're regularly picking up notes. For me, the biggest reward, you know, being involved in working with the schools and with the community, and just we've had volunteers. I think there's been 2 or 3 volunteers that have been to every event, and they're just like on our case. When's the next one? When's the next one? And they show up at all the locations around. That we've regularly got regular people that volunteers over and over. They just really enjoy it and see value in it. So that's really encouraging, and makes me want to get out of bed at 2 a.m. in the morning, get those cleaned. And you know, every time we roll out a new project, it's super exciting to go and see what's been captured and, you know, what we can now prevent going down the drain. So look, it might not look pretty, all this litter and everything, but I absolutely love working in this space, and to be able to, you know, contribute to the environment and help out and raise some awareness. I feel very privileged to work alongside with everyone, and I'm super excited to see the outcomes and to be a bit more involved with SRPs through this project. I'm very grateful to be involved. So I think that was everything from me. Thank you to everyone. And
thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So I just wanted to introduce the people that have joined us. So we have Simon. Simon, do you want to say hi and where you're from?
Yep. Hi. Sorry, I'm late. I'm from Wyndham Council.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. And we have Karen also.
Sorry, was that me? Is that me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry. Sorry. I must have, yeah, hi, I'm Karen from SV, and it's a real privilege to be here today, and had the lovely privilege of sort of, you know, working in the funding program that's supporting Heidi in this project. And I must apologise, I've got the presentation on my second screen, and I like looking at people's faces, so I'm sorry, I'm sort of going to be looking to the side. So but anyway, it's great to be here today. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. And just so everybody knows, we are recording this because we have a few people from other councils that weren't able to make it or had RDOs and so forth. So we're going to share the recording with them. We wanted to make sure that everybody was all on the same page as we're able to kick off on this project. So we've done a little bit of a update of where we're at so far, and we're about just to talk about a very short overview, a recap of what phase 1 was, and then we're going to talk about phase 2. So from a phase 1 perspective, it was the first real Victorian stormwater litter monitoring project that we were able to roll out. The goal was to map the urban litter hotspots, prevent litter from entering Port Phillip Bay, and collect data on the locations, quantities and types of litter captured in order to advise implementation and provide monitoring data for SRPs in the future. We're now in the future. We had 120 stormwater drain traps that were installed within 6 council areas, and they were split evenly across 4 different land use types. So we had some in a CBD setting, some in an industrial precinct areas, shopping centres and public transport areas. The monitoring took place between November 2019 and May 2020. We had 6 community audit events that changed dramatically as we got into 2020, and we had 94 volunteers that were engaged. We do have a short video here that we made as a result of that project. Has anybody not seen that video before? Otherwise, we can share the link, but we don't necessarily need to watch it unless people want to watch it, because I know the internet's a bit funny. Don't need to see it. No worries. All right, so we might just show the link is up the top here. Mel, do you just want to put that in the chat? So if anybody wants to watch it, that they can watch it. I'm sorry, that's a rooster in the background. That's my place. Sorry. At least it's not the Kelpie barking at the moment. So we were really proud of what we were able to achieve in round 1, and that was a collaboration between Sustainability Victoria, the Clean Water Group and Tangaroa Blue, along with the 6 councils that we initially had to kick off this project. Mel, I'll get you to change the slide for me if you may. All right, so as I mentioned, the University of New South Wales helped us with some data analysis, and we actually have a master's student who's writing it all up, and it should be published before the end of the year, which is pretty exciting. In total, over the 120 stormwater traps, we had over 75,000 macro litter items that were captured. We also had close to 700,000 microplastic items that were captured. The top two macro items were cigarette butts and miscellaneous paper. And in most cases, the miscellaneous paper were paper remnants because they became clumps of paper that we don't know what they were very quickly when it rained. They were kind of unidentifiable, but they were the two top macro items. And the predominant material types were hard and soft plastics as the material itself. Rounds 5 and 6 occurred during COVID restrictions. So who would have known we would have this unique data set being created when we first started the project? But we were able to continue those audits through some pretty creative ways of getting bags audited and microplastic samples being sent around the country for people in lockdown to be sorting and counting. So our team was pretty busy, even though they couldn't go outside with that. And we did see a 75% decrease in litter during the COVID restrictions. So that the least amount of litter round with the top litter round. The top litter round was in December 2019, and the lowest round was in April 2020. So 75% reduction in litter during that first audit. So these were just the top items by survey round that you can see. Next slide for me, Mel. And the next, this graph is to show the total item count by land use type. So you can see the differences between the data being captured from CBDs, industrial precincts, public transport terminals, and shopping centres. But hard plastic was the #1 across the board. Now, we do have a full report that's available on our website, which is just listed at the bottom of that slide. You just go to the resources tab and there's a reports tab there that you can download the full report. As I said, we've got our master's student from the University of New South Wales diving deep, and she will create a paper out of that will be published, and we'll of course share that with all the partners as well. Now, this initial round of data gives us a really good idea of suggested items to tackle within the source reduction project for phase 2, but we are going to do one more round of audits just to see where we actually are on that scale between 75% reduction and the worst round from December, to see actually where we're sitting now, because obviously COVID is still impacting. And that will give us a bit of context as to where we're starting from a data setting. Mel, next slide for me. And as we mentioned, this data will feed into not only our Australian Marine Debris Initiative database, but into this national stormwater data set that we're looking at. So other examples of stormwater projects that are very similar to this are being rolled out around the country. We have another one in Victoria, down in Warrnambool, that's currently is ongoing at the moment. We have a lot happening across Queensland through the Great Barrier Reef, including one in Gladstone, that the Gladstone Council is actually working specifically with schools. So we have traps specifically in a school setting, and the schools are going to look at implementing their own source reduction projects out of that, as well as other community projects in Ellie Beach Council, Mackay, and New South Wales as well. So we see that this is a really exciting way to develop a national stormwater data set, as well as what can be used at that state setting and local council setting as well. Mel, next slide, please. All right, I'm actually going to hand over to Mel to talk through the framework for phase 2.
Yes, thanks, Katie, and hi everyone. The newcomers who weren't at the start. So my name is Mel, and I'll be the project coordinator for this phase 2. And I'm unfortunately based down in Melbourne as well as all of you guys, so feeling the pain. But yeah, phase 2 finally here. So we'll be running this project for a period of 18 months, starting from now. And we've done some background work, obviously, already in August. And we will continue to identify those different sources and types of litter and pollutants. And this time around, we have a slight increase in the amount of litter traps we have as well. So we have 158 instead of 120, so a bit more of sorting to do. And we do have 2 new partners joining as well. So we have the City of Melbourne and the vicinity centres with 2 of their shopping centres, which is exciting. And additionally to phase 1, we do have those 8 source reduction plans as part of this project as well. So we will be focusing on some of those key litter items that we find from the data and implement those plans early November. And as Hayden mentioned before, the data collected during the phase 1 compared to the round 1 from this phase 2 will kind of let us know where we are with those items and the volumes of litter. And we will continue to monitor the data throughout the project to actually monitor how well the plans are working and if we do need to make any changes throughout the plan, throughout the project, sorry. And same as on phase 1, we will be sharing the results at the end of the project, early 2023, seems so far away. We will be hosting an online community forum where all the partners will be invited, and it's open to any interested parties, whether it's community members, organizations, and so on. And we will, of course, make also a final project report that we will publish on our website, same as phase 1. And just the aims and objectives for the phase 2. So we will be looking to bring the community, not-for-profit organizations, government, and business together to reduce the sources of plastic pollution, litter, and illegal dumping, as well as reduce waste generation in Port Phillip Bay through data collection, collaboration, education, and the implementation of the source reduction plans. And some of the outcomes that we're looking to get out of the phase 2 of the project. So we obviously still want to continue to reduce the actual amount of litter entering Port Phillip Bay. So that will be all the stuff that we capture in the traps. We will continue to collect and submit data into the Australian Marine Debris Initiative database and report on the litter collected as well. On each of the 8 servicing cycles, which will finish in November 22. And we will be looking to partner with all of you guys, so 6 councils and 1 corporate land manager altogether. And the aim is to engage a total of minimum 96 community volunteers as well to help us with the audits throughout the project. Community events will obviously be dependent on COVID restrictions, so we'll touch on that a little bit later as well, what our plan is there, and partner also to implement those 8 source reduction plans by the end of the project, which will be in March 23, and to hold the online community forum also by March 23. So here's roughly the timeline for you guys to view as well. Really the important part would be the audit cycles that are highlighted there. So that's when we would love to see any representatives from your councils as well to join us and help us, or offer places to hold the audits and help us obviously engage volunteers as well. So use your social media and other media outlets to tell people about the events so that we can get those 96 volunteers throughout the project. And the SRPs will be chosen and implemented after the first audit cycle. So the audits will take place end of October, so in a couple of weeks actually, which will be exciting. We'll get the first round, and then we can see what those problem items are and start implementing. So we're hoping to already see some changes by the second audit cycle, which will take place just before Christmas in December. And the volunteer audits, so like I mentioned, there's going to be a total of 8 cycles instead of 6 in the phase 1, and they will still take place every 8 weeks. And how we're planning to divide it is to have 4 days of auditing, whereas in phase 1 we have 3. But since we have more litter traps, we kind of need that extra day to get through all of them. So we will have 2 days with volunteers, and another 2 days we're planning to just have Tangara Blue and Clean Water Group staff do some of the sorting. And you can see an example how we would kind of have the audit cycle take place in December. So we'd have a staff day, then we'd have 2 days with the staff and volunteers, and then finish with the staff day as well. So at this stage, we're planning to have always Wednesdays and Thursdays with some volunteers helping us. And we do obviously have to also implement some kind of plan B for the first round, which will take place literally the couple of days before we're scheduled to get out of the lockdown if we hit our target. So we obviously can't have for the first round a public event with volunteers. So what our plan is to empty the traps, bag them, and then just do a contactless drop-off to some volunteers and industry partners for people to actually sort and count them at their homes, so that we can do it safely. And we will also provide them with all the gear like the sorting trays, hand brakes, all the PPE and so on. And we will also provide online training on how to collect the data, do the safety briefings and all that stuff. So make sure that it's still safe and the volunteers know what they're doing. But we just had to get a bit creative because we're not going to be able to have a public event, unfortunately, for the first round. But fingers crossed that that's the only round that we need to do this on. And I'll get Heidi to talk to you more about the source reduction plans.
Excellent. So the source reduction projects that are the new part to this phase 2, we're going to roll out one project in each council area or shopping mall, the shopping centre. So for the guys in the City of Hume, the vicinity centres, there'll be 2 projects there, one in each of their sites. So a total of 8 source reduction projects. The idea is to be guided by the data, and also that enables us to monitor the project by looking at the data as well. And we also see that these projects should start off small, like what we did with the stadium in Townsville that I talked about earlier, that then can be scaled. So if we get some really good wins on a smaller project, then we can see how that can be scaled within the council area and then across different council areas as well, by providing local context and local case studies. So I think what's really important is just to really have that in the back of our minds as we kick off this project, because we really want to be guided by council and by our corporate land manager partners on where they see their priority areas are, what plans they already have happening in the background, what projects are already happening in the background. So we don't go and put something in place that's in conflict to what's already happening, and we can value add and build on momentum that might have already been built within that landscape. So if we look at the steps for implementing a source reduction project, we want to use the data from phase 1 and that first cycle from phase 2 to pick what items that we'd like to look at targeting. We want to determine then, why are they ending up in the trap in the first place? What needs to change? Are we looking at a design in the product that's a problem? Do we want to look at infrastructure that needs to be adapted or changed? Do we look at an education and awareness campaign? Is there a compliance issue there? Do we actually need some kind of different compliance response? Or is it the way that someone's using something? So the behaviour, is it a change in practice or is it a change in usage? Now, we know that the same item might be released into the environment in different settings for different reasons. So that's why it's really important that we understand what kind of setting that item is being released in, and understand at exactly what point does it become litter, because that's the point that we want to target it at. So this needs to be a very collaborative process in identifying what target item we want to work on, and also how are we going to address it. So we bring to the project the experience from what's been happening in other areas under source reduction projects. We have budget to assist in that project, but we must have the land manager and the councils as partners with this part as well to make it really, really successful, because we won't be able to do some things that we need council approvals for. And also with that reach within departments, it's important that we're all kind of on the same page. We want that process of developing that source reduction plan to be one that we do it together. Once we know what we're going to target and how we're going to target it, then we would like to implement that. And it would be good if we could start that implementation process before the second round of auditing, which is in December. And then we will use the next rounds to really see how that is impacting. And by round 4, we would like to compare the data to round 1 and see what the impact is, and then really reassess. Are we getting the biggest bang for our buck? Do we need to tweak something? Is it not working at all? What can we do to continue the wins for the rest of that project for the next 4 rounds? And then just continually monitoring and then report back as a case study. So that's our process for the source reduction plans and how we've implemented them in other ways. I know that we have worked with some of the councils that are partners in this project already on source reduction projects. I think that a couple of things were different to the ones that we did back in 2016-17, in that we actually have a specific staff member in Mel who's on the ground that'll be able to work through this, and we actually have a budget to contribute to actually implementing it. It's not up to council just to come up with all the money for these grand ideas. So we've tried to address the feedback that we've received previously on how do we get a really good win out of that. And I think that we use that learning in what we've been doing in Queensland, and got some really great wins that we can kind of roll out in Victoria now and across Port Phillip Bay. Next slide there, Mel, I think is a bit of a example. So a couple of the projects that we have done in addition to the Operation Clean Sweep and the Ditch the Flick program that I talked about earlier is the Don't Dump on Our Reef program that we're rolling out, which looks at dog poo and dog poo bags, which are pretty disgusting, but we tried to make that kind of fun. We have a really quirky campaign that we're working with dog owners with. And you can see below that image there's a photo of our crew with the Angel Paws organisation, which is an adoption and a rescue pet organisation up in far north Queensland that have been helping us to roll this program out around Townsville. We're also doing a project that we're about to release a report from on rubber crumb on playgrounds, which might be really interesting for the councils to have a look at there. So we've quantified how much rubber crumb is lost off these kind of softball park areas, and to show that this may not be the most fit for purpose product from a use perspective. We've also done a lot of research on what's happening overseas from the health implications on some of this product. There's been cancer clusters in the US from women's soccer teams that have been playing on rubber crumb surfaces, for example. So we've tried to bring that all together to understand exactly the impacts of rubber crumb in parks, to provide that to the councils that we're working with up there, and we can definitely roll that out in Port Phillip Bay as well. We're doing a program called Look After Your Tackle, which is focused on recreational fishing litter. And as a part of that, we've got a couple of campaigns around educating fishers on the impact of some of their rec fishing gear if it's left in the environment. We have a Know Your Knots challenge, where we've had some pretty big celebrity rec fishers who have tied knots in a certain time. And the idea is if you tie a better knot, you lose less gear. So engaging the rec fishers in trying to beat the celebrity fishers by tying their knots quicker. And we've just rolled out in Queensland and a couple in Western Australia, these Save Your Tackle bins for a program called Rig Recycle, and we've partnered up with BCF. So there is an opportunity that we can roll this out across Victoria as well, where recreational fishing items like fishing line and rec fishing hand lines and spools can actually get captured within these bins. Anything that can be repaired will be repaired and create small little fishing kits that will go out to fishing charities like Able Anglers, and anything that can't be repaired is actually going through into a new recycling system that we're working with some of our Operation Clean Sweep plastic industry partners on, which is exciting. So that we're in a 3-month trial on that in the Great Barrier Reef at the moment. We're really excited about that. There's some examples of source reduction projects. We want to start off small, as I said, but then that can be scaled once we understand the best way for those projects to be rolled out. Thanks, Mel. Next slide. And so this is over to you guys. So Mel, did you want to talk to this slide?
Yeah, sure. So we just really wanted to hear your thoughts at this point as well. So if you already have any existing ideas, do you have some projects that you've started to draft or you're planning to actually implement this year or next year? If you have any the council plans or coastal management plans, environmental strategies, all that stuff that's focusing on specific items or specific areas of interest within your council, or any general litter campaigns as well. I just did a bit of a social media hunt for what you guys have previously done, and already found a lot of cool things from the past as well. So I know there's been focus on, for example, that dog poo bag. So we could potentially implement that don't dump on our reef, kind of don't dump on our bay or something like that. Or there's been some art around the stormwater drains as well. If you've noticed that obviously masks are probably an issue in every single council at this point, and they're not going away anytime soon. Or smart bins, cigarette butt campaigns, all that stuff. So a lot of cool stuff already happening, but if you have any plans at the moment, or if there's anything specific from the single-use plastic ban that you're looking into, because that will come to place in Victoria 23, I think. So if there's already something that you wanted to focus on that, yeah, just let us know. Feel free to unmute yourselves and let us know what your ideas are. Or write on the chat as well, so we can capture everything from there.
So I'm going to pick on Serena. Serena, what's happening in the City of Kingston that might link into this project?
Well, in terms of community engagement around litter prevention, there sadly I wouldn't say from council that we've been very active in that space. We have a waste education officer 1 day a week. I'm actually interested. I noticed a colleague there from Dandenong was saying that she's been employed in July. And I know that a lot of councils are putting more focus on litter prevention, waste education. So I'm actively working within the organisation to actually get more days, a waste education officer for more days, because my role touches on that, but it's not really the focus. So I'm a little bit more limited. But through the schools program, we've got the ICI Care program, which is run by the Dolphin Research Institute down in Hastings, and they actually support about 20 schools with marine, with a real focus on litter reduction. And you'd know Mandy Robertson, I'm sure, Haiti. Yeah, so you know that program. So that's great in the sense of how we're touching on the younger generation. But we do have volunteer groups like Beach Patrol and Love Our Streets, and they do amazing work. And we do promote events such as recently the Spring Clean Your Patch event, Clean Up Australia Day events. So we do support those events and those community groups. But I know within council we could be doing more, and that's where I'd really like to see a waste education officer, within more of an expanded role. So. Yeah, but I'll be interested in from other councils how they're finding that waste education and what the focus areas are for them.
And do you guys have a current litter plan? Are you right, or have you got one in draft format, or is there something that we can align with that would help council reach deliverables from that perspective?
Yeah, I don't have an understanding of a litter plan that's actually been documented. I think it's quite sporadic. The waste department's team leader, Tim Scott, I think he's very aware of a lot of the data that's come out of your great work, Haiti, particularly around some of the shopping strips and where some of the problem areas are. And there has been trial work done, I think, to try and stop cigarette butt litter. I think that has been a focus in the past. But yeah, I'd have to actually find out more from Tim as to what kind of, what would you say, structured programs that they have. Emily, I'm not sure if you're still on the call and whether you've got any comment on that.
Emily had sent me a message that said she had another conflicting appointment, so that she was going to watch the rest of the video later. Okay,
all right. Yeah, because Emily might be able to comment more, perhaps at a later stage.
And I guess that was our goal, was to say individually from each council area, it would be good to have a chat about this kind of in this earlier stage, just so that we know where council priorities are, and if there is anything existing that we can connect to, or are we starting from scratch, which is fine as well. But it just enables us all to be on that same page, so we can definitely pull something together for the City of Kingston on that. Awesome.
Fabulous.
Simon, what about from Wyndham? What's happening in Wyndham at the moment?
Yeah, so it's largely about education. We're really trying to ramp up our comms this year, particularly you know, having been in lockdown, we're trying to focus on what we can do from our homes, which is always challenging. We're going to looking to develop a litter plan as well. So more than just comms, you know, education, infrastructure, enforcement, all of that sort of stuff, how we can tie that in. So I think this project will work in well with that and help to shape that. What else are we doing? Because we're waste education officers, some of it is focused on things like recycling contamination, which isn't directly linked to this, but then also we do have a big focus at the moment on like just what we call bin management, you know, like people having overflowing bins, putting rubbish bags next to their bins, that sort of stuff, which all has a real direct link to litter and dump rubbish. So that's yeah, probably what we're focusing on more at the moment. Big efforts. I mean, we've always had a big focus on dump rubbish, particularly because it's such a problem in Wyndham, which sort of ties in with litter, but it's also a little bit different in the sense that we get like a lot of like construction dumping and stuff, which is never going to wash or blow away. It's just going to sit there, which is another problem in itself. So yeah, lots of little things. We've got some little community initiatives, cleaning cabinets that we've put out. Do you guys work with Ocean Crusaders? The Tangaroa Blue?
Oh yeah, we know those guys from some work up in Queensland.
Yeah.
And I think we did the Yarra River Blitz with them too a couple of years ago.
Okay, yeah, so we did a bit of work with them and they installed some cleaning cabinets for us along the Werribee River, so volunteers can go and access the cleaning cabinet, go and do a clean up, put all the rubbish and everything back in the cabinet, lock it up, and just to help out. And we also have a program called Little Legends where we recognise people in the community who are doing the right thing. So yeah, it's largely about comms, but then also trying to stop it, the prevention side through the waste education as well.
Awesome. So just to both you and to Serena, did any of the projects that we kind of gave us case studies of what we're doing, did any of those go, hey, that might work really well, just as a starting point? Did any of them think?
Yeah, well, actually, the cigarette butt one, the ditch the flick, I thought was looked really effective. And I did go to a sorting event back in 2019, and I saw just how much cigarette butts was a contaminant. So I think anything to address cigarette butts, and there's just that misconception that people have that, oh, it's going to break down in the environment. And I think part of the messaging has to be that, and we have put it out there in some of our e-newsletters around Clean Up Australia Day and other cleanup events, that the cigarette butt contaminant that's entering the Port Phillip Bay, because it does have that plastic content, and they do take so long to break down that people are often misguided in thinking, oh, it's the natural product of fibres and eventually it'll break down. So comms is such a strong tool in the toolkit. But following on from what Simon said, something that came to mind is we have done similar to yourself, Simon, there with really managing overflowing bins in public areas. So Emily's been involved recently as the open space manager, getting stickers on bins, particularly when we had that really busy summer where everyone came out of lockdown and just hit the beaches, and bins were just filling and overflowing quite quickly. So we've now got this procedure where you can actually just report straight to council, this bin needs, it's like a QR code on the sticker, I believe. So there's kind of real-time reporting of this bin is nearly full, or this one needs collection fast, or that kind of message to get people to proactively help council identify, because there could be 2 to 3 collections on busy days, but if there's a local event or something that we're unaware of, those bins, particularly near beaches and waterways, as we know, are the priority ones to be cleaned out as soon as possible.
Do you get a lot of reports from Snap, Send and Solve, and is there much of a delay in actioning those reports regarding bins, for example?
That I don't know, but they do go through to customer care, and they have a great procedure, I'm sure, to get through to the contractors to get everything cleaned. I'm sure that would have been worked through as part of the sticker program. So the stickers only come in recently, and I'm sure that back end would have been sorted out, because there's no point having the sticker on there and then the disappointment of it not being cleared quickly.
Yeah, awesome. Simon, any of the examples that we gave connect straight away and go, yep, that sounds something like we might want to look at as part of the SRP process?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we're unfortunate enough that anything, it's all, we have all those problems and more. So yeah, I mean, I'd be interested, you were saying about how, you know, we could look at doing some measuring of what's being captured, trying something to see if we can fix it, measuring it again. I think that's something that would be good to use the data to, I guess, sort of be a bit more strategic about what we're doing. Because I know in the past we have, you know, we're still doing the Building a Cleaner Wyndham program. We have done like campaigns to try to reduce cigarette butts. But it's always, I guess, questionable as to how effective it is. So yeah, it'd be good to be able to back it up with some data.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And for those of you that weren't able to attend today that you're watching on the video, we asked you the same questions. So we'd like to know what you're currently doing, or if there is a focus within council on an issue in the future, whether you have litter plans. If you can provide that information to Mel, so Mel's email is melissa@tangaroablue.org, and you would have received emails from her about this workshop, and she'll be sending you the link to the video anyway. But if you can filter that through to her, as to we want to be really strategic in what we're designing to make sure it's fit for purpose for each council area or land manager, and that we're not asking for people to do things that they just don't have the capacity to do. So it's really important that we do some good planning in the lead up to that. Karen, I am going to ask from an SB perspective, is there anything that we've talked about here that you think of, hey, wow, that really connects with something that's happening at state level that we can also take into consideration?
Thanks for the question. I'm not really, given my role, I'm not really sort of able to answer sort of what's happening at a state level. I suppose what I could say at this point is that, you know, from my role in terms of program funding and our expectations around sort of community engagement initiatives, we are very much aware that, you know, there needs to be sort of adaptation and or pullback or flexibility around how different communities are engaged at the moment and in the future. So yeah, so I just what you're saying is sounding, you know, really reasonable and totally appropriate, and it's sort of resonating with what we're sort of thinking internally at SV, because we know it's just such a moving feast at the moment with community engagement practices anyway. So anyway, that's my 5 cents worth.
No, awesome. I mean, this consultation process is critical in getting the biggest bang for our buck. So we're very open to have communications and ideas and concepts and all kinds of stuff, but we want to align with what people have as priorities and what they are, you know, focused on to make sure that there's no doubling up. I know that we all hate, you know, finding out about resources that got duplicated or programs that got duplicated when there was no need to, and you know, good communication flows reduce that chance of happening. So please keep in contact with us with ideas and so forth. Mel, I do think that there is maybe one more slide. Oh, 2 more slides. So one is just our contact details, so that if you haven't got anybody's contact details, we just want to put them up there. So there's mine, there's Mel's. As I said, Mel is based in Melbourne, and Aaron from an asset management perspective, from servicing or installation, all that kind of stuff. So please feel free to contact us if you need or you've got any questions at all. And then we were just going to say, is there any other questions that anybody has? No, I'll take silence is all good. So we're going to wrap this up a little bit early, which is great. I really want to thank everybody's time, for people that were able to attend today, but also for those of you that are watching the video after. And please, we'll be in contact with you as we start to move through the implementation of programs, both the servicing of the assets, the auditing the data, and the source reduction projects. If you have, I guess, specific needs from data collection and data reporting, please also let us know that as well. At what scale do you want to see data, and how often do you want to see data, and then we can input that into our work plans as well to make sure everybody's getting back what they need and in a timeline that they need as well. Obviously, 158 traps is 158 entries and vetting and working through for the data. So there'll be a little bit of a lag from when the audit finishes to when the data will be available. But if you have any milestones that you need to meet, if you can let us know, then we can work our way towards meeting those as well wherever we can.
Just one question. Right?
Yes,
if you can. Yeah, I don't know if you or maybe Karen wants to answer this as well. Obviously, we've got state government funding for this program, which is great. My question is, are we getting much interest from either state or federal about doing some of the comms at their levels? Because, you know, something like cigarette butts, it doesn't make much sense for every single council to try to, you know, take that one on by themselves. It'd make more sense to do it at a state or federal level. So yeah, just wondering if we're getting much interest in those comms from those levels.
I can say that from the last round, there was representatives from all layers of government, actually from multiple states on these issues. So I see that maybe cigarette butt litter is not necessarily one that SV or the state government needs to take, but it's a national problem. And I will say that cigarette butt litter is listed in the National Plastics Plan as well at a federal level. So we would love to have, you know, more case studies like we did for Townsville Stadium coming out of this program to be able to feed into these kind of campaigns, messaging, resources, all the rest of it at a federal level, cool. because that's how big the issue is.
Yeah, it's massive. All right, thank you.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for everybody's time today. As everybody said, we're super excited to kickstart this project. Mel will be in contact with everybody moving forward with anything that we need, but please keep that communication flow going. And if there's ideas that you have, let us know. And have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Heidi.
Thanks.
Lovely to meet you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks.